Hi, thanks for taking the time to watch this video. This video is going to take you through the configuration of time and attendance in Virdi's Unis software. One thing to note, if you have more than 10 users in your database, you will need to purchase a UniWork dongle to use the TNA functionality. So let's start by configuring our environment. First thing we need to do is tell the system that it's using TNA. Okay, and that it needs to auto process. Okay, so that's to say it will auto process the TNA transactions. One thing to pay attention to here is pay period. Pay period also relates to the total hours worked and how it summarizes that information. So you have three options, that's monthly, weekly or fortnightly. It doesn't matter if you initially configure the system to process those totals on a monthly basis and then decide later on, actually, no, you know what, we want to run that as a weekly total. That's absolutely fine. You can come and change that. And in fact, when we go through the TNA configuration, I'll be going back and I'll actually be changing things and then rerunning reports. So the point that we're making here is that once you've configured TNA, you can change the configuration, you can rerun reports and get different results, because all that it's doing is it's looking at existing data. So we'll OK that. Then we need to ensure that our terminal is also set to work in TNA mode. So double click it and we have function here is TNA, and then we also go to setup options, select network, and check here that it's set as TNA for its operation mode. When you set a terminal to work in TNA mode, it will still work in access control mode. That's to say it will still open doors, it will still adhere to any access groups and access group configuration that you have configured. Right, so that's our environment configured. Now let's configure a TNA shift. So note here there's a wizard. The wizard will take you through a very quick and simple configuration, but today we're going to look at manually configuring it, just to give you a better idea of the mechanics of what's going on. Okay, so shift configuration. So code is 2 digits, so we'll call it 01. Name, we'll call it TNA. Okay, note here that you can run over, for example, a 24-hour period. You can also go overnight to the next day. So it depends entirely, obviously, on the organization and the shift that you're configuring. Okay, clocking mode. You'll see here you've got some options. You've got use all function keys or use attend and leave keys. Function keys are only an option, i.e. attend and leave keys are only an option on the AC5000 and the AC2200. The AC2000 doesn't have function keys. So clocking mode, if you're using an AC2000, for example, would be use all function keys. So we'll keep that as all function keys today. Okay, time frame. That's the time frame that you're looking to process data within. I'm going to set that today from midnight to midnight. If, for example, though, you had an organization where that just wasn't going to be applicable, you can change that time frame. So for example, if you had a 12-hour shift that started at 8 in the morning and finished at 8 at night, you would want to set the time frame from 6 in the morning till 10 at night. So that's 2 hours before and 2 hours after the actual shift. Okay, then we have late in and early out time here. This doesn't need to be configured. You only need to configure late in and early out times if they're applicable to the site and the shift that you're configuring. So what you would say here, we could say, okay, well, let's call 1 minute past 9 as late, and early out we'll call 1 minute to 5. Okay, multiple day shifts, that allows you to set multiple late in, early out times, depending again entirely on the organization that you're configuring this for. I'll have a quick look at advanced settings. Auto clock in and auto clock out are exactly what they sound like. They automatically clock a user in and automatically clock a user out. Break times here on the left. If you don't have function keys on your terminal, then it's not going to be possible for the system to determine when you went out for a break and when you came back from your break. So what is an option in that scenario is to manually put break times in. So if we were to manually enter a break time here of, let's say, midday to 12:30. Okay, what that would do when the report was run, that would automatically deduct half an hour from the user's hours, total hours worked. Okay, so where you have a very rigid organization, for example, maybe a factory floor where everyone takes their break at a set time every day, then this is ideal for that kind of scenario, because it will automatically just deduct that half an hour. Okay. If, however, you have function keys, then you can deduct the break time using function keys. There's an option for use all function keys, so it doesn't matter what function key is selected, it will say, right, okay, you've gone on your break and you've come back. Or you can be a little bit more specific and you can say use in key only, or you can configure it to work by the lead record. Again, that would be the option here would be to use only attend key. However, I must stress again, you have to have a terminal with function keys for that to work. And then here we can see our multiple day shifts, and that's what I was just sort of mentioned before. If you have multiple day shifts and you're going to have multiple late start and early leave times. Okay. So we're not going to configure any break settings yet, but what we'll do is once we've configured this basic shift, we'll run a report. We'll see what the information that it gives us. Then we'll come back and then we'll change some of these settings in here, and that way you can get an idea for exactly what your client's going to see if they configure these options. Okay. Right, here we have pay rate. Again, as mentioned before, pay rate also essentially relates to total hours. So rate 1, you see we have some various options here. You can actually, within this software, you can say, right, okay, if someone's pay rate is, let's say, £10 an hour, well, you can configure it and say, okay, your pay rate for overtime is £11 an hour. So if you have an organisation where they actually want to work out people's wages directly from this software, then this is where you would say, right, work out what you're owed before the shift starts and what you're owed as overtime. But for this demonstration, we're just going to go with normal time. Okay, method. We have fixed shift, actual time, or overtime. Okay, if you select fixed shift, the start and end time here becomes highlighted. So if you have a user, for example, that clocks in at 8 o'clock in the morning and leaves at 8 o'clock in the evening and they've worked 12 hours, if you set the fixed shift for 9 to 5, it will ignore the time that they've worked before and after 9 and 5, and it will just report that they've worked 8 hours as opposed to the 12 that they've actually worked. So we're going to go with actual time. So actual time would show a full 12 hours. It wouldn't just report the time within the fixed shift that they've worked. Okay, advanced settings here allows you to configure rounding for the different pay rates. Okay, so we've got this configured, and we're going to add that now. So it says registration complete. We'll close that. Now we need to set a schedule. Okay, so again, it's a code. This code's 4 digits. Okay, and we'll also call this schedule TNA, as well as the shift being TNA. Okay, so you can define holiday shifts. Okay, so schedule. You can have up to a 30-day schedule configured. We're going to go with a nice simple 5-day. Okay, and start day is going to be today, and then we go in and we set our shift. So you'll notice that we have to go in and specify the shift. So for example, if you did have a client in an environment where, for example, Fridays were a half day, then you could have a half day shift set for the Friday. Okay, so we've got our code, we've got our name, and we're going to add that in. Okay, and we're going to close that. So now what we need to do is apply the schedule to a user. So I've already enrolled someone in here. We're going to select our schedule, hit set. Okay, right. So the schedule is now set to that user. So I've already used the terminal today, so there's some data for us to work with. Okay, right. So the first thing we do is process our transactions. Before you run any type of report, any type of TNA report, you have to process the transactions. So effectively we're saying, right, process transactions for these dates. You can do up to a maximum of 30 days. So we're just going to process today. Close that. Okay, and we can output a period result. That will output everyone within a department for a set period, or we can select person result, which will only output data for specific people. So we're going to select our TNA user, make sure our search period is correct. Yep, and we'll hit search. Okay, so what we can see here is an arrival time of 6:54, departure time 10:23. Okay, so saying we've worked 3 hours and 29 minutes. So that's given us a total here. As mentioned before, there's things like overtime hours and time before shift that can be configured. If that's configured and you need to see that data, then with all of these TNA reports, there's a settings button here. Okay, and in here you can come in and you can choose the data that you see. You can choose what you get in your report. Okay, so for example, if you were looking at early departure time, you could enable that, apply it, search again, and you can see we set up an early departure time of 1 minute to 5, so it's going to report early departure of 6 hours and 36 minutes. Okay. So let's go back now and configure something for break reports. So we'll go back to our shift config. Okay, advanced settings, and I'm going to say let's deduct break report using function keys. Okay, so we'll set that now. Okay, we're also going to get rid of the late in and early out time. So we'll modify our schedule. Close that. Now we're going to process transactions again. Okay, output our period result. So let's configure our settings. So what do we want to see? We're not interested in branch, department, title. We'll get rid of shift. We'll keep arrival and departure time. We have no late after time set, no early departure time set. We'll keep normal time there. Time before shift we're not interested in. Overtime. Okay. Okay. So this gives us our report for TNA user 1. Now notice that normal time is not 3 hours and 29, it's now 3 hours and 27 minutes. So that would suggest that we've lost 2 minutes. Okay, that's because we've configured a break report. Okay, so if we go now to break report for today, we can see here that a break was taken at 21 minutes past 10 to 23 minutes past. Hence the 2 minutes difference between the first report we ran for total hours and this report. Okay, now let's go back again, and this time we're going to set up an automatic break. Okay, so we'll come in here and we'll say, right, we'll get rid of that, and we'll say, okay, so first break is between, say, 9 o'clock in the morning and 10 o'clock. Okay, so we should lose an hour now. So rather than seeing 3 hours and 29 minutes as our total, we should see 2 hours and 29 minutes. So let's set that and modify the shift. Okay, and then again, process our transactions. Okay, that's telling us that we can't process transactions for days where there's no data yet. Okay, so set that. Type the first, process that. Okay, put our period result, search, and you see we've lost an hour. That's because we've configured it to automatically take an hour out between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock. Okay, so there's a few more reports here to show you. So we have our TNA reports here. So late arrivals, early departures, there won't be any of that because we haven't configured for the shift that we're using at the moment. There is no late and early configured. And again, absenteeism, I've clocked in. There's only one user. If there were multiple users that hadn't clocked in, then their information would be listed here as absent. Okay, break reports. We've seen them already. Okay, summary management. So summary management is where you get your totals for your week, your month and fortnightly, depending obviously on how you've configured the system. So what we can do here is we can go back and I can show you an example of how to process the data, but there won't be any data. So we could process for September. Okay, and then we can go to output summary or output person summary. That works exactly the same as it does for the effectively for the daily TNA reports. So if we were to output period summary and search, okay, oh, we have got some data in there, so showing that for September we worked for 3 minutes. Okay, note here the week box that would be enabled if we were processing by week as opposed to by month. Okay, one other thing to note with reports is they can all be saved. Okay, if you actually run the report, you can save the report. Okay, what you can also do here, we'll run a person report. Okay, that's just telling us we're not selecting anyone. And let's make sure we've got our date correct. That's because I processed for September. So if we just process again today, okay, close, output period result, that's just today that we're interested in. Okay, then we have an option here to save to file. Okay, we can save that to text CSV file. Okay, that can then obviously be imported into programs like Excel. Okay, well, thanks for watching and goodbye.